How? How did she fall? I always wonder how.
Lilo, why are you all wet?
Because you live on an island. It's easy to find water.
Every Thursday I take Pudge the fish a peanut butter sandwich. Crazy.
We don't use the C word here. But also, let's try to not punch each other.
Everybody calm down.
Girls are only for the owl. Lilo.
Dude.
I'm sorry. I won't do it again.
Maybe we should call your sister.
No, I'll be good. I want to dance. I practiced. I just want to dance. I practiced.
This is called attribution error and is one of the events that create injustice wounds in children. And injustice wounds can make you feel stuck, like no one truly understands what you've been through. Lilo was apprehended, even though she was obviously provoked, yet nobody acknowledged that part, as if it never happened. The adult in this scene is more focused on not encouraging this type of behavior rather than understanding the context that made it possible. And by doing so, he reinforces on Lilo behavioral suppression instead of helping her figure out her feelings and regulate. These are key moments adults around us could use to teach children emotional regulation. But since they also most probably have no idea how to do it themselves, they also cannot recognize chances to teach it. Having no emotional regulation tools will lead her to feel like she has no control over her emotions once she'll be an adult. But most worrisome is that Lilo may internalize the belief that anger is a bad emotion and practice emotional suppression as a coping mechanism. But that would ultimately make her blame herself for feeling anger to begin with. Her repeating she just wants to dance happens because she's simply having a human experience, especially considering her parents' death, yet she's threatened with punishment.
I called your sister. She said to wait for her here on the porch.
Ah, poor Lilo.
We'll try again on Sunday.
Are you gonna play
What are
dolls?
they talking about?
You don't have a doll. This is Scrum. I made her, but her head is too big. So I pretend a bug laid eggs in her ear. And she's upset because she only has a few more days to...
Man, why are children so cruel? My heart. I find that this scene addresses the poverty wound in childhood that unfortunately alienates and isolates the child from peers and makes them feel weird and inadequate. And when others treat them in this way and substantially mirror their thoughts, it's almost as if they confirm those thoughts are true, reinforcing a negative self-concept. Lilo cannot afford dolls like the other girls. She doesn't have parents anymore, and her sister, barely an adult herself, is forced to take on a parentified role. So it's safe to assume they're both in the very middle of their grieving process and their financial situation isn't really good. Yet Lilo tries to remain optimistic and persistent, trying to approach the other girls and essentially present them with a part of her world, hoping that if she is able to present it well enough, appealing enough, they just might be swayed and accept her as a part of the group. This is called impression management, by the way. She's able to use her imagination to justify and excuse the physical defects of her doll, showing that she understands hers is the inferior one. Already a harsh internalization of the social economic hierarchy. She's too young to understand that her uniqueness and creativity, her imagination, are her strength. Though she gets frustrated by the failure to fit in, which forces her to confront a bigger struggle than she should at this age. The choice between being her authentic self and remaining alone, or concealing her true self in the hopes of being accepted.
Lilo, we don't have time for this.
Leave me alone to die.
Come on, Lilo, the social worker's gonna be here any minute.
Crank it up. While extremely funny, this scene is also heartbreaking. Children don't have the necessary parts of the brain to deal with certain traumas, therefore very often their brain numbs them as a coping mechanism. This is what psychology calls disassociation. It involves a disconnection between a person's thoughts, identity, consciousness, and memory at times. And this can occur as a response to trauma, especially in children who may not have fully developed coping mechanisms or neural pathways to process intense emotions and experiences. And this coping mechanism makes the child feel less and less safe in their own life, to the point that only isolation feels comfortable and safe, even though it's the opposite of what the child seeks, creating a very hard to manage paradox called the approach avoidance conflict.
Are you the guardian in question?
Yes,
Right.
I'm Nani. Nice to meet you, Mr.
Bubbles?
No.
Mr.
I remember
Bubbles.
correctly.
You often leave your sister home alone?
No,
Never.
Oh!
Because the parents are out of the picture, Lilo doesn't get the necessary attention and affection she should. Her sister is trying, but she's just one person after all, and very young, so very often she meets the sister's apathy with anger instead of patience and understanding. Receiving attention helps children develop socially, cognitively, emotionally. It's what is going to dictate attachment formation. And of course, self-confidence and self-esteem. A child who didn't have to fight for attention and care will develop much more confidence because they grow up thinking they're inherently deserving of love. Children like Lilo often grow up to believe they need to work for love because they don't simply deserve it. Now, Nani has become a mother overnight, which is especially hard considering she's only 19. Her prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making, emotional regulation, etc., won't fully develop until around 25. This makes her more prone to impulsive decisions, risk-taking, and emotional reactivity while struggling to manage stress. She has to find a job, manage bills, deal with a very rigid social service agent, and support Lilo through her pain, all while her own brain is still developing. Despite this, she's really trying her best.
This did not go well.
I was not. Oh, well, thank you for that.
You have 3 days to change my mind.
You better run, girly pop. You can see how well they know each other because they kind of know each other's tricks. So this is very endearing to see it as well.
Why didn't you wait at the school? You were supposed to wait there. Lilo! Do you not understand? Do you want to be taken away?
Oh.
Answer me!
No!
No, you don't understand?
No!
No! What?
No!
Okay. If Lilo had the necessary skills, she'd be able to express the fear and loneliness that she feels verbally, but instead all she can do is scream no. If she could, I'm sure she'd say, I'm so sorry, I just was so humiliated and scared and alone and I tried to make friends and it all blew in my face and everything is so hard since our parents have died. But she's 6 years old after all. She hasn't yet developed the language skills or the right emotional vocabulary for that matter, so her brain steps in to protect her by shutting down. And I see these as signs of emotional overwhelm and possibly a form of disassociation too. Love and nurturing.